What has been, based on your findings, what's the biggest contributor to the litter? Is it like roadside litter? Is it just through urban areas? Where are you seeing
Yeah,
the biggest?
and I think that that's a really great question. So I think one of the things that has struck us so far is that the old school ways of dealing, I think we have probably more litter than ever, and we need more solutions than ever to come to the table. You know, for the sources, I think a lot of people talk about single-use plastics and your Amazon packages. And so I think there's a parallel where as we grow, we are increasingly the convenience economy, right? We want it fast, we want it now, we want it simple. But the trade-off, the more convenience that we're getting, then somebody's absorbing that, and that just tends to happen in our on our roadsides and in our parks. um, I think the biggest contributors, I think they just vary a lot by location. Human activity is a really huge driver, and so that human activity can manifest in different ways depending on what the situation is. And so, for example, one of the places, in Norfolk, we're doing pilots in parks, for example. And so when you think about the parks that really struggle with litter, some of that happens because their different communities use parks in different ways. So I think many people are accustomed to a park being a place where maybe you do a light jog and then you go home, or there's a quick picnic. But there are some communities, and especially some of the lower income communities, parks become more of a refuge, right? It's a place where I barely have like a lot of, outdoorsy space where I live. So when I go to the park, it's almost like, on the weekends, it's like a gathering of my friends. It's like a Super Bowl party. Like it's a
Mhm.
whole festival, entirely different from maybe the more, um, I don't know, lighter human activity uses. And so in those cases, if you come to that thinking, oh, I can just send a volunteer like once a month and maybe that'll do it, then all of these unexpected things happen. And sometimes it's not just that, oh, the people who came there were intending to trash the place. I mean, maybe some of that does happen. But if you think, the analogy that I always think about is that if you've ever had at your house a whole bunch of people, maybe even more than there should be, who come there and hang out, even if you've got the bags and everybody's trying to put things away, you still end up with some cups that are out there. Like somebody still has to come and clean up afterwards. So anyways, we see things like that where just different neighborhoods have different intensities of use, and so that just is one thing that changes the whole thing. On road segments, what's been very interesting is that you start to see patterns of that are connected to, it's still that human activity, but that human activity connected to how a particular space is being used. In one of the cities that where we have work on roadsides, there start to be very huge differences, between like the road segments connected to a vineyard versus the road segments connected to where contractors are working. And so, you find that, well, for the vineyards, they somehow, with the activity, and probably they also have their folks who are actively going out and removing any litter. It tends to be not a lot of buildup of bottles or anything like that. But invariably on road segments, whenever there's heavy machinery, whether it's tractors or where construction is happening, those road segments tend to be ones where lots of bottles, cans, wrappers from the construction activity. So anyway, so there are things like that you start to notice that it's more location based. based on, what's happening with the human activity. And some of those things start to come back to when you think about, the stormwater infrastructure and what ends up going downstream. You know, it's one thing, by the time that you've gotten downstream, there are just different things that are happening at the top that are contributing to that. So over the long term, what I'm excited about is that, because we're beginning to tease out a lot of these patterns, for us to be good at what we do, understanding the patterns and figuring out what strategies to deploy workers is a really important piece. But we want to be able to work with other groups who are trying to figure out, oh my gosh, for the Chesapeake Bay or for the others that we're trying to do better with, how can we get better at understanding what's going on upstream so that we can more effectively engage? And if effectively engaging doesn't just mean that, you tell business to be better or tell people or educate people not to throw the things out, but do you have the right set of strategies in your toolbox, to help improve the situation? And sometimes we think that means that for the kind of, paid service that we offer, where either on demand or with a recurring kind of use, you use Frontline as the approach to really get things back up to a level where it now becomes more manageable and no longer a threat to downstream when you've got a heavy rain that occurs.
Well, it's really interesting. Taking a walk several weekends ago, we went to Yorktown Beach, and my wife and I, we commented. It was awesome. I mean, just in the sense of, just like you had described, there were so many people. Everybody, I mean, there's just multiple families that were there. They're playing music, and it was such a diverse. There's so much diversity. I mean, like, I didn't know that there was that much diversity in the York County area. But I mean, so there was all kinds of different music. There was all kinds of different food. I mean, and the place was just packed. And then, to your point, I'm just thinking to myself, my gosh, there's all this going on, and they're producing a lot of garbage. And that York County is on the hook to continue to collect all of this trash, to the point where it's like, I can't even, it would take multiple people over the course of the weekend nonstop collecting trash, that it's like, wow, this is like a lost leader for York County, that just to stay on top of all the trash that's being produced. So I definitely see what you're saying there. And my other point to what you were saying, I'm sure that Elon Musk is listening to this. But one thing that I would really like him to do and is established a contract with you, because the one thing that's missing at all of the supercharging stations around the world, there's not a single garbage can at the superchargers. I mean, and it's just like, and I get it. There's no one staffs these superchargers, because you go there, you plug in, and hit your card, and it's completely seamless. But there's no garbage receptacle there at all. And I wish that would be something that he would add.
Have you seen that as does that tend to be
everywhere, everyone?
Like a lot of just a litter attractant? Like, it's a place where trash does build up?
Some are worse than others. And sometimes, I mean, it would really bother me. It's just like, come on, people. I mean, it's like, you're at a Tesla supercharger.
Interesting.
Clearly, the only people that are creating this litter are people in Teslas. So it's just like, stop. You're making.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people
really
there's a lot of people at your standard gas station that seem to litter too. At least, I guess, hopefully there's someone there to clean it up. But I mean, they don't want that trash in their car, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting though. I hadn't thought of.
If you ever check out a supercharger, look, you won't ever find a trash can.
So the one in the city of Norfolk parking garage, there's not a trash can around that?
Well, that's not a supercharger. That's a destination charger. So the superchargers, that's something that Tesla puts in and maintains.
Gotcha. How do you make